Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Monday, the 20th of October, and I am Holly Wainwright.
I am Amelia Lester.
And I'm Claire Murphy.
Welcome, Murphy. Jessie Stevens is on holiday. Now, just to fill people in.
Where is she? Well,
I can't tell you in case everybody rushes off to find her, but the poor pregnant with twins woman is taking a much-needed little break, little treat, putting her little feet up, putting all the little feet up that are inside her at the moment. Anyway.
Oh my gosh, she has 6 feet right now. How weird.
Does. We'll get back to her. Anyway, here's what's on our agenda for today. There's a Gwyneth-adjacent TV show that's unlike anything else, and it's all about something none of us want to talk about, and a controversial cardigan.
Plus, Kim Kardashian wore a pretty unusual dress this weekend, and it made me wonder just how much fashion designers hate women.
And the problem of Prince Andrew for the king and his heir seems to finally maybe be being dealt with, but why is Andrew stepping away from his royal titles now is the question. But first, in case you missed it, can anyone at this point in time confirm the exact whereabouts of Rihanna, Anne Hathaway, Sandra Bullock, Kate Blanchett, Helena Bonham Carter and Sarah Paulson?
No.
Because in a plot that feels straight out of Ocean's 8, thieves arrived on motorbike at the Louvre yesterday before using a crane or basket lift to access a window that they opened using a disc cutter to target the Apollo Gallery of the Louvre Museum, where they keep a selection of the French crown jewels from back when they had a monarchy, grabbing stacks of them before getting away just 4 minutes later. This happened at 9:30 a.m., not in the dead of night when we expect jewel thieves and cat burglars to be at their best. It was already packed with tourists and the tour guides were taking people around for the day, and one of them gave an interview in the street outside and said they were just in the building. They heard a loud noise from one of the windows before staff told them all to urgently evacuate. What is happening? Is this a movie plot IRL?
I was very excited by this news. I immediately put it in our family group chat because I was one of those annoying Australians who was in Europe this northern summer. I'm not usually, but this year it was my turn to be irritating. And I took the kids to France, as Outlouders would know, and we went to the Louvre. And my kids were, particularly my daughter, was much more excited by this crown jewels bit than by the Mona Lisa and all those things. And she posed for all these selfies where she's wearing this little crown that got stolen. But I just assumed, because they're really impressive. They're like emeralds as big as your fist. There are all these amazing things. I assumed they were fake. I assumed surely with all these people milling around, and obviously they're behind glass, but I was like, is this really the real thing? And I'd assumed the same about the Tower of London and the English crown jewels, but no, they are the real deal, which is obviously why these guys want them.
Well, French authorities have said the value of what has been stolen is inestimable. Like they cannot put a price on it.
And they're going to have to melt it all down to sell it if they want to sell it.
Well, who's going to buy it?
They can't.
Unless there's some, I don't know, Russian oligarch who's like, get me the French crown jewels, and he's just sitting in his toilet wearing a crown of a long forgotten French monarch. I don't know.
I think this is the most French story that ever existed. The French just love Frenching on us. First of all, can I unpack the many ways this is extremely French? First of all, they're jewel thieves. Remember, jewel thieves also came up with Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian had her jewels stolen in Paris.
By like a bunch of elderly jewel thieves, if I remember rightly. They were like octogenarians or something.
What I want to know is how many jewel thieves in France are putting jewel thief on their tax return, because I just feel like there's lots more of them in France than anywhere else. Second thing about this is you mentioned, Claire, that they climbed up on a crane. Yes. How is no one stopping them and saying, has this crane got a safety certificate? What's going on with the crane outside the Louvre?
There has been a lot of discussion about security and safety at the Louvre for quite some time, and it obviously has not been addressed to their satisfaction. And case in point, someone was able to park a crane outside that could access a window.
And
so,
my third point, the reason why this is so French, they managed to get away with this at 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one's awake in France at 9:30 on a Sunday. This is why it was possible. I proved my point. The French are going to French on us.
Friends, if you happen to see a cut price crown on Facebook Marketplace in the next couple of days,
buy it. It's legit.
Be cautious.
Okay, moving on. How do you solve a problem like Andrew? Over the weekend, you probably caught that Prince Andrew, that pesky little brother of King Charles, reportedly Mummy, Queen Elizabeth's favourite, and who also consorted with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and seems to have lied about just how long that relationship lasted in recent emails that have been made public between the Duke and Epstein, showing he continued to support him even after he was exposed. Andrew has decided after some discussion with the king to give up all his royal titles.
Is decided the right word there, Claire?
Well, I'll get to that. So he will no longer be the Duke of York. He'll give up his membership of the Order of the Garter, which is the most senior order of knighthood, as well as a bunch of others. He did release a statement saying continued accusations about him distract from the work of His Majesty and the royal family. So he will still be a prince. His ex, Sarah Ferguson, though, will stop being a duchess. She was also caught up in the emails to Epstein list. Their daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, will still be princesses. But then on top of that, London police are probing whether Prince Andrew also asked an officer assigned to him as a bodyguard to dig up dirt on sexual assault accuser Virginia Giuffre. The Metro Police said on Sunday they're actively looking into media reports that Andrew sought information in 2011 to smear Giuffre by asking an officer on the force to find out if she had a criminal record. She did not. That is besides the point. If you aren't aware, Virginia Giuffre took her own life back in April. Her new memoir is reportedly being released this week. Her family says they're happy Andrew is stepping back, saying it was a joyous moment for survivors of Epstein. But Holly, as Mamamia's royal correspondent, why is this happening now? Has Andrew's been fighting this for years? Is he jumping before being pushed?
I don't think he's jumping at all. I think he was pushed. I think that this story is so upsetting on so many levels. Obviously, some extracts from, you mentioned, Claire, how Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoirs coming out this week, October 21st. That some extracts have been published. The reading is so sobering in terms of how she was first introduced to Epstein via Mar-a-Lago, which, as we know, is Donald Trump's resort in Florida, about what happened to her, about what went on with Epstein, about her, and obviously we have to say alleged encounters with Prince Andrew, because he has always denied, even though he settled out of court with her, he has always denied that anything went on there. But the fact that the royal family haven't acted decisively on Andrew until it has become impossible for them to do anything else is so, I don't know what the word is, cowardly, depressing. It's because the thing is that if King Charles really disapproved of the way his mum handled this, so when this all first came out, as you said, Andrew rumoured to be the favourite, she sort of slapped him on the wrist, and there was this discussion about stepping back, and he's widely been reported to have been, since then, sitting in one of the many manor houses on the Windsor estate, watching TV. He likes apparently to watch planes land and take off, like live footage.
Good on him. And isn't Charles trying to kick him out of that house?
Yes, and riding his horses, right? So he's been doing that. But anytime there's a royal event that he is allowed to go to, he turns up, he tries to get front and centre, and he's been agitating to get back in. And the fact that if Charles really disapproved of the way his mum handled that and was disgusted by his brother's actions, then the minute he became king, he could have done this. He could have acted straight away. You know, he could have said, I'm taking your titles. There's no more public appearances for you. You're done. But he didn't. He hasn't done that until the reporting around this story has become so loud and so unavoidable. It's got to a point where they can't pretend anymore. It feels so reactive from the royals, don't you think, Amelia?
I do. I think there were two things that happened last week that really prompted Charles to finally take action. And by the way, the reporting seems to indicate that William was the one who really had to pressure Charles into doing this.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Two events. The first event was, as you mentioned, Virginia Giuffre's biography. There was an excerpt published in The Guardian, and there was a particular phrase that I just could not get over or get past. And I think these are the words which finally made the palace listen to what Virginia has to say. And she wrote, he of Prince Andrew, he was friendly enough but still entitled, as if he believed having sex with me was his birthright. And the reason why I think those words hit so heavy is because he does have a birthright. Now, the birthright is not to have sex with whoever he wants to have sex with, but the nature of a royal family is that he has a birthright, and that is why he is sitting in his 30-room mansion watching the planes take off, and that is why he has lived with wealth that we can never imagine his whole life, because he does have a birthright, and that's why those words, I think, really affected people and prompted William, perhaps, as the reporting goes, to speak to Charles about how it was untenable. The second thing that happened last week, and this is a bit more cynical of me, is that another scandal broke last week with Prince Andrew. He had been meeting, it is alleged, with senior Chinese Communist Party officials who were clearly playing him. They knew that he was a weak link in terms of the British royal family. So I hate to be cynical about it, but isn't it interesting that we have been hearing about what he allegedly did to Virginia Giuffre for years? And it wasn't until there was also a national security implication from Prince Andrew's poor judgment, him hanging out with the Chinese Communist Party officials, that Charles finally felt compelled to act.
Yeah, I think we discussed this a few weeks ago about how lesser royals are a real problem for the monarchy because they want to be living in this style of all their rich and fabulous friends, but they don't actually get that public income anymore. And famously, Charles has whittled the list down a little bit. William, by all reporting, is going to whittle it down even further about who gets to still live high on the hog on the public purse, as they'd say, right? And the problem with that is that it opens them up to all these, they go and sidle up to all kinds of unsavory characters to try and get some money. And that seems to be what Andrew was doing for a long time. Charles himself has been accused of it before too. And it was something that drove the Queen mad. She was like, why can't they just sit in their manor houses and count the pheasants outside their windows, and they're off like taking bagfuls of cash from Saudi princes and God knows what. And this reporting just makes me, everybody who listens to this show knows I love royal gossip, and I do. And I watch this family, as I've said before, in the same kind of way as I watch a soap opera that's been going on my entire life, But as you pointed out, Amelia, the birthright nature of this kind of privilege where I can get away with whatever I want, I will always be protected. There have always been problematic royals who get shuffled away from the limelight. That attitude has prevailed for a really long time. There's something encouraging maybe about the fact that we're saying no, but as I say, it's depressing that it's taken this level of scandal for Charles to finally allegedly be, all the reporting is saying he's furious. It's like, well, why wasn't he furious 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
It's funny because we're all for the monarchy modernising. Like we want them to, be up with us in the moral choices that we make. They obviously are still lacking in quite a few areas, but there's a part of me that's like, if Andrew had done something to this level that put the royal family, their reputation at risk 100 years ago, he would have been exiled. Like, we saw the Queen's father's brother, when he abdicated, he was exiled to another country. He was basically told he was never to play any role. And that guy was king for 5 minutes. He was told never to play a role in royal life ever again. So whilst they have modernised and they are trying to do things by modern standards, there's a part of me that's like, sometimes that old royal family justice needs to come. We're not cutting anyone's heads off. Let's not go that far. Should probably, slight disclaimer here, one of my relatives did cut off the head of King Charles I.
Really,
so just
Murphy? That's very impressive.
Yeah. So my mum is related to a man called Oliver Cromwell, who is like a dirty name. So we just don't really say that out loud. But, not talking about secreting small kings away in towers until they're never seen again, not that kind of stuff. But like, exile this guy, get him out of the public's face. He did an awful thing, but he's allegedly done this awful thing. And he's been in cahoots with a guy who's known to have done awful things, and that he definitely would have been aware of at least some of the things that he was up to. Like, it would be hard pressed to be that close to someone and not have any idea of what they were doing. But
of course he knew. But I think they think that's what they've done. They think they have exiled him. But the problem is that until this latest progression. So just to explain a little bit, he's had the Duke of York taken from him as a title that he's allowed to use, just as you said, Claire, that Sarah Ferguson has too. But he hasn't had Prince taken from him because he actually can't have that taken from him because it is his birthright. So just like Prince Harry will always be a prince no matter what, Prince Andrew will always be a prince no matter what. And I think they have exiled him. And as you mentioned, they're allegedly trying to shuffle him into Frogmore Cottage, which is where Harry and Meg's used to live.
It's had a nice renovation.
It's had a lovely renovation. We heard all about the sprung yoga studio floor. But he doesn't want to do that. But he kind of has been exiled. But now I think that the vision of him at the Duchess of Kent's funeral when he was trying to cozy up to William and William was absolutely blanking him, gave off this impression of this completely unself-aware, bumbling, self-pitying man who was like, it's so unfair that I'm not allowed to hang around in front of the cameras with my family anymore. That will be off the table.
And I think the question that remains for me is, did Charles do this because he had become so, quote unquote, furious or disgusted with Andrew's behavior? Or did he do it because he knows that the monarchy needs to survive and that this kind of scandal paired with the Chinese Communist Party spying scandal just can't work with the
Well, that's always it, isn't it? We know the Queen was presented with these kind of dilemmas many times throughout her time on the throne, and she did have to make a choice sometimes that, yes, the future of the monarchy is what comes first, and that future does not look good with Andrew still riding in carriages.
Kim Kardashian this past weekend attended something called the Academy Museum Gala in Los Angeles, and she wore something that I found actively upsetting. Let me try and describe it for you. It was a couture look, meaning that it had been made especially for her by a French fashion designer named Maison Margiela. Come at me, French people, which included...
For the second time today.
For the second time today, yeah.
They are not happy with me. It included a mask which covered Kim's entire face. As she was being led into the event, you could actually see her flailing around with her arms, trying not to fall. And I love this detail. There's a tabloid called Mirror US. They went full investigative reporters on this. They used video enhancement software to figure out what she was saying to her assistant because she looked incredibly panicked. But of course, wearing the mask, you couldn't tell what she was saying.
We couldn't send the lip readers, the celebrity lip readers in.
Well, so you think, Holly. They zoomed in. And they had a lip reader figure out what she was saying through the mesh mask. And it was, don't let go, I can't see a thing. So the dress itself, though, Holly,
Great
I know
party.
you actually found the dress even more disturbing than the mask. The dress, how would you describe the dress?
So the dress itself was also very much on trend with this tiny, tiny waist that I think we're going to get to in a minute. But it almost looked like it followed her ribs and then it was so painful looking.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in fashion that is really viscerally upsetting.
I find it quite fun, though, the idea that she's got to navigate the whole party with
Like, surely at some
mask
stage,
on.
though, she's going to be handed a glass of champagne and then what?
Well, I don't think so because I listened to her interview on Call Her Daddy and remember when she wore the all-black mask to the Met Gala? Alex Cooper asked her, come on, when you were inside, you took it off, right? She said no, she committed to the look. She didn't eat, she didn't drink, she didn't look anyone in the eye. Like, this is the least fun party of all time. Anyway, sorry,
Can I
Amelia.
just mention too, I know like the waist of this dress you've described as, you know, something we all should be achieving, but it looks hideous. It's like they've pulled her in so tight that like the flesh above it is having to bulge out across the top of a corset.
Yeah.
And that looks like, A, it hurts and it does not look pleasing to the eye as far as like it has beautiful sleeves. I'll give it that. The bottom of the dress looks gorgeous. But then this mask that you're referring to, it literally looked like this used to be a scarf or a shawl and they just kind of plonked it over her head and then put a big choker chain around it. So now it's a mask. It's just a scarf over her face. Like am I into couture fashion? Not overly, but I just feel like this isn't
Emperor's
pleasing
new
to look
clothes.
at.
Well, this is what I want to talk about. Who are these looks for? And fashion is meant to be for women mostly. High fashion certainly runs on women's dollars and women's purchasing power. But there was an interview I read recently with arguably the world's most important fashion editor. Her name is Stella Bugbee, and she is the fashion editor at the New York Times. And she wrote on her Instagram stories after Paris Fashion Week this year, sometimes it feels like fashion hates women. Now, that we've been hearing lines like that from more feminist, explicitly feminist voices for a long time, but to hear it from a fashion editor is really striking.
Someone on the inside.
Exactly. And she included a couple of examples which were really disturbing. A couple were a dress without armholes, so you're trapped in it like a cocoon. Aprons that are meant to evoke trad wives, And then what I found most disturbing, a metal contraption that you put in your mouth that forces your mouth open and you cannot close your mouth while you're wearing it. And she said, look, fashion's always pushed the envelope. There's always been unwearable things on the runway. We know this. But what she felt was different this year was a sense of active hatred of women, the very people who are meant to be wearing these clothes. So my question for you, Claire, is given that high fashion does run on women's money, why? How can it make good business sense to repel women?
I guess you need to kind of zoom out a little bit and look at where the world is politically right now too, because there is obviously a move towards a far-right ideology in many places. The US, which is, tends to be the center of where a lot of this fashion becomes public for us to consume. And the trad wife movement has become huge online. And so there is this move, and there is something called the Mar-a-Lago face, which is, plastic surgery that a lot of the women who are especially in and around Trump's camp are all kind of doing. It feels like there's a movement, and this has happened in history before, when women become too outspoken, maybe in too many leadership positions for the liking of certain aspects of the community, that then there is a shift. And that's when women get skinnier, where they are looking at controlling women more, where if we can put you in a mask where no one can see your face, where you can barely speak to people, that is a statement, which is about silencing a woman. If you put her in a dress with no arms, you're essentially putting her in a straitjacket and constricting her, and she can no longer be free to move. When women of the suffragette movement started wearing pants, it was like, how dare they have this freedom to ride a bicycle with ease? Like, it's the same kind of vibe, except in reverse, where you restrict women in the things that they wear, and then they have to focus on teetering around on heels that might break their ankles or never sitting down comfortably. That becomes their focus rather than the focus of leading a company or being outspoken about women's rights. Like, it feels like there is a real political statement in dressing women in a way that makes them so uncomfortable.
One of the interesting things about this is that this season that we've just seen that you've been describing with these very quite shocking looks also coincides with some of the key labels going back to having male heads of their design after years of having females there. That sort of is beginning to feel a bit like a blip, and now the dudes are back in charge of their Dojo Mojo casa houses and they're doing what they want to do. That's not entirely true, of course, because there are still some women at the head of these fashion designers. So women are getting smaller, as you've already said, Claire, and also there's this trend of the tiny waist that we saw on Kim Kardashian, and it's called, a wasp waist, an ant waist, or a Barbie waist, which seems to be appropriate because it's so tiny that there's no room for the woman's actual organs, a bit like a doll. And that is actually being achieved, not necessarily on the catwalks, because we've also seen this return to really, really skinny models who can wear all these things anyway. But we've seen a rise in a particular kind of plastic surgery that removes what they call the floating ribs, the 11th and 12th ribs. The New York Times have written about this. The New York Magazine has written about this, is that reclaiming the waist is kind of, any woman will know that one of the things that will go when your life shifts, maybe you have a baby, maybe you age, maybe your hormones are moving around, is your waist. So having a really defined waist is a symbol of something, youth, discipline, all of those things. And it's back in a big way, and in a way that women are actually harming themselves to achieve. None of this is very fun. And I thought fashion was meant to be fun.
But the thing I'm struggling with a bit here is it's kind of convenient to blame it on the men, to blame it on MAGA, or to blame it on the male fashion designers. And Stella says that it's not just about that. She talked about the Ozempification of the runway. She said, I don't want to feel like I have to get plastic surgery or go on a pill in order to participate in this world. She said there's no attempts at body positivity anymore.
To be honest, I've always felt that, haven't you? That like high fashion is not for me because I'm not 6 foot tall
100%.
And a size 0?
Well, yes, I think to some extent, but I'm seeing it trickle down not just from the catwalk, but also, for instance, at that Academy Gala where Kim was, the thing that I noticed was that every woman around my age, and I'm around the age of 40, they all looked exactly the same. Jennifer Lawrence, Alison Brie, Mandy Moore, Emma Stone. These women are very powerful women in Hollywood. They don't need to conform to a particular ideal. In fact, they got famous looking a particular way, looking a unique particular way. They had something that no one else had. And now all of these women look the same. Their features have the same prominent cheekbones. They've all got these cat-like eyes. They've all got Dakota Johnson fringes. I think, incidentally, she's very much the paragon of this particular look. It's very refined. It's giving Nepo baby. It's giving privilege.
And she's also kind of ageless. Like, I don't know how old Dakota Johnson is.
She hasn't had children. I think that's another thing that all these women have in common is that they had children and then decided to come back looking completely different. So I'm wondering why they all got this memo, what the memo said, and why these women who actually have a lot of power. These are not random influencers. These are Academy Award winners. These are women who have been in Hollywood for decades. Why are they feeling the need to conform to a particular look?
It feels sometimes like we lived through a blip for a hot minute where there was some attempts at body diversity on both red carpets and fashion.
It was the 2010s.
runways.
That was it, right?
But also, isn't it terrifying that the most diverse runway show we've seen of late is the Victoria's Secret one?
It's
like
true.
that is wild that is the most diverse we've got right now.
It did, and it feels like maybe it's like we lived through a blip where people were like, we need to address this. And now there's been a big pushback on it, and it's like, no, we don't. And I don't know, it's really hard, as we often talk about on this show, to address the individual women that you listed there, because I know that those women who were all sort of fated for being ingenues in a way, think about Jennifer Lawrence is an absolute classic example of this. When you think about it, her youth, when she was stumbling up the stairs at the Oscars and stuff and like giggling at Jack Nicholson and things, was very much part of her appeal.
That's so true.
This sort of wide-eyed, slightly incredulous, innocent with a wicked sense of humour, felt very 22. Do you know what I mean? Like as in she was 22, not the year. And all women as they age wrestle with this, like how much do I fight it? How much do I lean in? And these women are under an amount of pressure that most of us can only imagine. Although, unfortunately,
we're on YouTube, so we can imagine.
Well, that's true. We can imagine. And in fact, everybody's on Instagram and everybody's being filmed all the time and everybody's in their photos with their friends and going, not that one, this one. So we all feel a level of that pressure. But I think the women that you've just listed, as you've said, they're coming back in inverted commas after maybe a career break. And they're like, I'm the ingenue, I've got to stick there, whether or not that's them or whether that's the industry telling them. But it does all feel very much like there was a moment, maybe we grabbed onto it too hard, where we were like, the things are looking different in fashion, things are looking different on the red carpet. There's a bit more body diversity, even if it feels a bit token at times. And now it's like, absolutely not. We are right back to original programming.
Well, and like you said, it's just not fun. The whole point of fashion is to sell me something. And I'm looking at all these women who look exactly the same. First of all, I can't have a fringe. It's actually a crime against humanity for someone with hair as curly as mine to attempt a fringe. So that's out of the question. I can't have a fringe. I can't wear the dress with no sleeves because how would I get on the bus and tap my card? So what am I meant to buy from all of this? Where is the fun stuff, the beautiful stuff that is meant to be something that I aspire to?
Maybe that's the thing, is that they're keeping it separate again. Remember when body diversity was at the forefront, it was more accessible. And then there were designers who came out and were actually saying, I don't want people of diverse bodies to wear my clothes.
Karl Lagerfeld famously said that.
Yeah. So maybe this is a step back to that, where they're saying, I want my clothes to be seen on a certain body type and it's not yours. So we are left to make decisions from a different catwalk, definitely not these ones.
I just need to pick myself up because as you made the point, Amelia, when I was talking about the men being back in control at, Dior, Chanel, there isn't a single woman in charge of a main fashion house. And you said, but we can't just blame it on them. And you're right, because there's a very good example that we spoke about last week, which is Victoria Beckham, who is the woman who is at the head of her own eponymous label. And Stella McCartney is the other one who's notable. But we know that Victoria Beckham also likes her models incredibly skinny. Fashion designers do hate women in a way because they get in the way of their clothes. Their inconvenient bodies with their inconvenient flesh gets in the way of their clothes. And seeing these shots that you were talking about before where models are wearing masks, models are unrecognizable, it's like, don't look at her, look at my clothes. Maybe it's also a reaction to when the models got too big for their boots and they became more famous than the clothes. I don't know. It's interesting. But on the fun fact, I think we have to hold on to the absurdity of watching Kim Kardashian with a mask over her face or a scarf over her face, as you've pointed out.
Yeah.
Being interviewed on the red carpet and talking through her mask about her pubic wigs that we discussed last week. Like, if we cannot all hold hands and laugh at that, then we really have lost it.
And I'm sorry to the French.
I learned a new term this weekend, which is always one of my favourite things to do. I spent the weekend in Perth, by the way. Beautiful Perth, lovely Perth at the Festival of Fiction. It was great. I met lots of great people. And one of these people told me a new term. She was giving me a lift somewhere to the airport to go home. And she said, this is a trip trap. And I was like, what's a trip trap? And she said, well, you know when you give someone a ride, and this is particularly relevant to parents with children, or maybe it's your partner and there's something you need to talk about, but parents with children who get to that adolescent age and everybody always says the best place to have a difficult conversation is the car.
Yes.
That's where, because everybody's looking ahead, they don't have to do eye contact, they can't escape. It's a trip trap.
It's a trip trap.
Because you're trapping them on your trip to talk about something important. And this lady was saying to me that when she drives her husband somewhere now, and then he gets in and she's kind of like, so we really need to talk. He's like, this is a trip trap.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Have you ever employed
I also
the trip
do this
trap?
to my friends when I know that they are driving to school pickup. Like, because we don't live in the same state anymore, I know what time they're in the car and will answer my call. And they're there by themselves with no distractions until the kids get in. And one of my friends in particular lives in quite a remote area. So her trip to school is like an hour. So I know I get her for like a full hour on the phone with no distractions. She can't work. She can't log into anything. She can't scroll a thing. I have her full attention. I didn't have a name for it, but I love a trip trap.
It also makes me think tangentially of when you're dating, I think it's always easier to sit at the bar rather than sit facing each other because eye contact is such an intimacy killer in a way. It makes everyone scared to speak.
And awkward. So I need to talk to you about something. I basically tied Amelia to a chair. I did. I trip-trapped you last week. We had to go. We were going to do a show at South by Southwest and we shared a cab. And so you were trip-trapped and I chewed your ear off about this show. So there's a new show on Netflix and it's called Famous Last Words, right? And it is, and yes, I'm also trip-trapping you into a discussion that's adjacent to my friend Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, okay.
Because the creator and host of this show is her husband, Brad II, as I will always refer to him, but actually known as Brad Falchuk, who is
the Duke of Montecito by some accounts.
Yes. And he is a TV showrunner. I think he's responsible for Glee, American Horror Story. He's like quite a big deal, right? And he's notoriously handsome, but we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, the show it's an interview show. But the idea is that he has interviewed very famous, very, very old people. And this is their last ever interview. They've purpose-built a studio where there are cameras everywhere, but no camera people in the room, so that it's a completely intimate setting, just handsome Brad and the celebrity in question. And they have a very intimate conversation. The celebrity or the famous person is allowed to request any drink they want, any props they want to facilitate this. And then at the end of the interview, handsome Brad leaves the room and the celebrity talks direct to camera in their famous last words. Now, the thing that makes this interesting is that the show does not air until that person is dead. So that's why it's called Famous Last Words. It is based on a Danish show. So it wasn't Brad's idea. It's based on a Danish show called The Last Word, which has been very successful in Denmark. And apparently there it's got to the kind of cultural level where when a big public figure passes away, everybody goes, oh, I hope they did one of these.
Yeah, I love that.
So the thing that blows my mind about this, well, there are many things and we're going to discuss it, but is the idea, so Netflix is showing this. When Brad goes to them and goes, I've got this idea, they've got no idea if this show is going to be on once a week. Well, it's definitely not going to be on once a week, but once a month, twice a year, 5 times a year, not at all, because they interview, put it in the can and hold on to it until somebody is dead. What do you think?
So you trip-trapped me to tell me
I
about
did.
this, and it was all I could think of. So I went home and I watched the show.
So the first one is?
The first one is with Jane Goodall, the renowned scientist and primatologist. And here's my first impression. Brad is as about as good an interviewer as you could imagine from someone called Brad, which is to say not great. He's not a great interviewer.
But he's so warm.
Here's what I will say. I get the Brad thing now. I never got why Gwyneth was making the boyfriend breakfast for Brad. I never fully understood the appeal of Brad the second. But seeing him and his warm smile and his kind eyes and his shawl collar sweater, I'm kind of in love with Brad.
Is he a sweet boy? Okay.
The
He's
only
very
thing I
sweet.
don't like about Brad is that cardigan. If I was Gwyneth, and he was wearing that to go out film his show, I'd be like, darling, no. I would spill some coffee on it. I would accidentally rip it with my boyfriend breakfast scissors. Anyway, the thing that's interesting about this is the secrecy that surrounds it too, because she sat him down and interviewed him on her show, and she was like, tell me who you've interviewed, because she said that Jane Goodall was the last one to be filmed, but the first one out because they've got no control of it. We've got a little grab of her asking him about it.
Interestingly, the first episode to air was actually the last one that you shot.
Mm-hmm.
You shot it when? When was it?
We shot that in March, so really recently.
And you're not at liberty to say the other people.
I am not, never will.
Let's guess.
Jane Fonda for sure.
Oh, of course.
So it's people in their 90s, famous, but he says there are people at the top of their games who are in their 90s. So Jane Fonda for sure.
I don't know if
as you
she's
say.
in her 90s. She's getting up there.
Rupert's in his 90s. Rupert Murdoch is in his 90s.
Rupert Murdoch. I don't want Brad, the kindly Brad, to have to spend any time with Rupert Murdoch in a sealed off room.
You cannot sully Brad II with some Murdoch, can you? No.
It's
Who else? Clint Eastwood? Is Clint Eastwood in his 90s?
I don't want him in the room either.
I think Clint Eastwood for
Robert
sure.
Redford, I was hoping, but no, I guess they didn't have Robert Redford.
The thing is that, and obviously my journalistic brain goes here, is that in Brad and Gwyneth's house, I don't like to cast any aspersions. But does that mean that when Jane Goodall passed, there was a little bit of Brad that was like,
Oh, there's a little silver. Oh, no.
like, my show can be released. Finally, everyone will know about my show.
So the way it works in practice is the most compelling part of the show is when Brad leaves the room and the person just speaks direct to the camera. And what Jane does at that point, the thing she's asked for as her accompaniment is a glass of whiskey, which I love. Brad doesn't seem to like
such
drinking.
a badass, that woman.
He said in the Gwyneth interview, he said that Jane was hammering the whiskey. And that
Why the hell not?
and, and that she was hard to
I mean,
keep
drink
up with.
responsibly, but Jane Goodall deserves a whiskey, right?
So he leaves the room and she basically says something which I found so moving that I found myself starting to cry, which won't sound that moving when I say it because I'm not Jane Goodall and I'm not hammered on whiskey right now. But it was basically like, don't lose hope. Like the world feels dark and I just want you to keep fighting the good fight, basically. And there was just something from someone who brings so much credibility to those words. It felt really powerful.
Claire, do you think there's a real life application for the idea of this show?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because and I have unfortunately been to quite a few funerals in the last 5 years, and it always occurred to me that though some of the people whose funeral it was knew that they were going to pass away, none of them recorded a video message. None of them. And I was like, I would have, like if I was in that situation, I would want to maybe – some of it would be nice, but I would also like that opportunity to tell people who I know will turn up at my funeral exactly how I feel about them so they walk away from there knowing full well how I felt about certain things that they did. But I feel like there's something lovely in, and maybe it'll be a bit different for us because we do what we do and we have access to audio recording equipment and video recording equipment, and maybe it's not as easy for, everybody, but you all have a phone these days that records video. But I would love to see people do more video recordings that get played at their funeral so people can kind of get that last impression of them.
Murphy, is what you just said, the way I interpreted that is that you would like the video message at your funeral to be like, and you, Auntie Beryl.
Oh, sometimes, yeah, not all of it. Like I'll be telling the people that I love, but I know that there are people who will turn up that I will have words for.
And you will be like, and what are you even doing here, Kevin? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's 100%. A whole new idea.
And I will put it out there and there will be one name in particular. I say, if this person is in the crowd right now. Get up and walk your ass out those doors. 100%.
Jane Goodall did say that she wants Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Putin and Xi to get on a spaceship and go to outer space, which I thought was kind of great. You know, there was a famous Australian who did exactly what you're advising here today, Claire. Let's take a listen.
Fellow Australians, if you are seeing me now, it means I have been murdered.
No.
I had to remind you of it.
I forgot that she did that.
That was Pauline Hanson in the late 90s, I think.
Yeah,
I was in high school. It made a big impression on me.
Why did she do that?
Because
Can you remember the circumstances?
Are you asking me to explain Pauline Hanson
No,
to you?
I'm just
I think
trying to
she was
remember
just generally
why.
a little bit paranoid. And so she decided to record this video that would play in case of her death. But unlike Brad II, whoever was in charge of that video obviously decided to release it.
The thing that's interesting, I love your take on it, Claire, that this kind, because Jane Goodall's interview, as you might expect, is actually very classy. She did say some quite interesting things about her relationships, because I think the idea of this, why it's appealing, is that you've got nothing to lose. So you can absolutely put everything on blast. And
You have to trust that Brad II is not going to leak any of it.
well,
Look into
apparently-
Brad's eyes. I'd go
he would.
anywhere
And
for Brad.
apparently there's something involved where it gets locked away in a library
With
thing.
Brad's sweater collection,
Yeah, maybe.
perhaps.
Oh my God, it should be. That sweater collection deserves to be locked up. But that's the idea, I think, is that you. So, but I hope they are, because the other thing he said in his interview with Gwyneth, which was slightly disappointing actually, is he said people are actually very predictable in their regrets. Like everybody at the end of their life was very predictable in their regrets. He said, all the things that we pay lip service to all the time as saying are the most important things to us, family, loved ones, spending time with our kids, are the things that everybody regrets. And then Gwyneth said, which is golden, this is the other thing we talked about in our trip trap, Amelia and I, he said that most of these very successful people that he'd interviewed regretted not spending enough time with their kids because they were achieving all their great things. And my friend Gwyneth says, well, at least I know, I'm paraphrasing her, but it's great, at least I know I will never have that regret because I gave up work to spend lots and lots of time with my children.
So great and makes women everywhere feel amazing.
Yeah, Gwyneth is what we should all aspire to be.
The funny thing about Jane, though, is that she doesn't really say what Brad says everyone says. Essentially what she says in that interview is that she loved her chimps certainly more than both of her husbands.
Yeah, that's true.
Who she says she should never have married because she didn't love them.
I mean, fair call.
Reading between the lines, more than her son.
Well, and he certainly thought so, right? Her son certainly thought
And
that.
she said that he thought that with justification.
Yes, which is really interesting. So in theory, this is a great idea, the no holds barred. I'm fascinated to know who else he's done, but I also want to pick up Murphy's idea of just putting everyone on blast at your funeral.
Oh, I love that. I mean, not everybody. My friend Mel, who passed away a few years ago, if she'd recorded something, it would have just been like love and light and telling every single person in the room the most amazing things about them. And we all would have walked out of there like all warm and fuzzy and feeling incredible and sad at the same time. I mean, I'm not as nice as her, so there would be words for some people, but there are some people that I like who would get very nice messages too, and they will walk out feeling lovely. So,
Out Louders, tell us if you or any of your loved ones have got kind of unusual ways of making sure everybody remembers how you feel about them after they go. A massive thank you, Out Louders, for being here with us on Monday. Thank you to you, Claire Murphy, for filling in for us.
Thanks for having me.
Always such a pleasure to have you here. And to our fabulous team for putting this together. Goodbye, friends. We'll be back in your ears tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.